I'm sitting at the main table of my only daughter's wedding reception at the Plaza Hotel, watching Olivia unwrap what I assume is another crystal vase or monogrammed towel set. The chandeliers above cast golden light across 200 guests, most of whom I've never met. Half belong to the Morrison family from New Jersey, people my daughter has known for less than 2 years. The other half are friends and colleagues who've watched me build Remington medical devices from a startup in my garage to a company that sold for $45 million 3 years ago. Olivia looks breathtaking in her Vera Wang gown, the one we spent 6 weekends selecting together in the city. Her dark blonde hair is swept up in an elegant chignon, her makeup flawless despite the tears she cried during the ceremony. Happy tears, she insisted. But I saw something else in her eyes during those vows. Anxiety, doubt, the same expression she wore when she was 7 and knew she'd failed her math test but didn't want to disappoint me. My new son-in-law, Ethan Morrison, stands beside her with that practiced smile I've learned to recognize over the past 8 months. Handsome in a conventional way, tall, blue-eyed, the kind of man who knows exactly how attractive he is and uses it like currency. He's been working the room all evening, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, playing the role of perfect groom. But I've noticed how often his eyes drift to his mother, seeking approval like a child waiting for a gold star. Maureen Morrison sits 3 seats down from me, separated by her husband Frank, and 2 empty chairs that should have been occupied by Thomas's parents if they were still alive. She's been in her element all evening, circulating among guests as if this were her daughter's wedding, her event, her triumph. The floral dress she's wearing is too tight across the middle and covered in a pattern that makes my eyes hurt. Her makeup is thick, her jewelry loud. Everything about her screams trying too hard, wanting desperately to be noticed, to be important. She's been inserting herself into every aspect of this wedding for months, suggesting cheaper invitations when I'd already selected Italian paper stock, recommending a buffet of fried chicken and mashed potatoes when we had a tasting menu planned with a French chef. Each suggestion came with that same passive-aggressive tone, wrapped in concern about keeping things simple and not being wasteful, as if spending money I earned on my daughter's wedding was somehow shameful. Olivia tears open the silver wrapping paper on the box Maureen handed her 5 minutes ago. The room has gone quiet in that way wedding receptions do when something significant is about to happen. I notice the videographer has moved closer, camera aimed at my daughter's face. Maureen is practically vibrating with anticipation, that false smile plastered across her face like she's about to reveal the most generous gift ever given. My daughter lifts the lid off the box. Her hands freeze. The smile on her face falters, then disappears entirely. She reaches in and pulls out fabric. White fabric with ruffles, an apron, a matching headpiece. She holds it up, and I feel my blood turn to ice as I realize what I'm looking at. A complete maid's uniform, the kind worn by housekeepers in old movies. Apron, cap, the works. The silence in the room becomes absolute. 200 people staring, trying to understand if this is some kind of joke. Olivia's face has gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. She looks at the uniform, then at Maureen, then at Ethan, confusion and hurt written across every feature. Then Ethan laughs, not a polite chuckle, a full laugh that carries across the entire ballroom. "Perfect, Mom," he says loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's actually brilliant. She's definitely going to need that." He turns to Olivia, still laughing, completely oblivious to the tears forming in her eyes. "My mom was already worried you wouldn't know how to take care of our house properly, babe. This is perfect timing." Maureen starts clapping, delighted with herself, as if this is adorable instead of devastating. "I just thought it would be practical," she announces to the room. "Every new bride needs to learn her responsibilities. I wore one just like it for the first 5 years of my marriage, didn't I, Frank?" Frank Morrison, sitting beside her looking like he wishes he could disappear through the floor, doesn't respond. He's staring at his plate, his face red, clearly mortified, but too beaten down by 34 years of marriage to his wife to actually intervene. I watch a tear slide down Olivia's cheek, cutting a path through her $800 makeup. She's clutching that uniform in her hands like she doesn't know what to do with it. Her eyes find mine across the table, and the look on her face destroys me. It's the same expression she had when she was 12 and the popular girls at school told her she wasn't pretty enough to sit with them at lunch. Humiliated, confused, begging me to make it better. Something inside me goes very cold and very calm. I've been preparing for this moment, though I didn't know exactly when it would come. I knew Maureen Morrison would eventually show her true colors. I knew my daughter would need me to act. I just didn't anticipate it would happen here, now, in front of 200 witnesses. I stand up slowly, smoothing down my navy Chanel suit. Every eye in the room turns to me. I signal to the maitre d', a man I spoke with extensively 2 weeks ago when I made certain arrangements. He nods and disappears toward the back office. "Maureen," I say, my voice carrying across the silent room with perfect clarity. "What an interesting tradition, giving household uniforms as wedding gifts. How very thoughtful of you." She beams at me, completely missing the edge in my tone. "I just believe in practical gifts. None of this crystal and china nonsense. Real life requires real work." "I couldn't agree more about the value of practical, revealing gifts," I continue. "In fact, I brought something quite practical myself. Something that reveals a great deal." I see Ethan's smile falter slightly. "Good. Let him wonder." The maitre d' returns carrying a thick manila envelope, the one I entrusted to the hotel's security 2 hours before the ceremony began. He hands it to me with a small nod. I hold it for a moment, feeling its weight, knowing exactly what's inside because I've reviewed the contents a dozen times. "Since we're sharing gifts that teach important lessons," I say, looking directly at Maureen, "I thought it would be appropriate to open mine now as well. Olivia, darling, would you ask the Master of Ceremonies to read what's inside? I think everyone should hear this." Olivia is staring at me, mascara smudged, still holding that degrading uniform. She nods slowly. The MC, a young man in a tuxedo who's been handling announcements all evening, takes the envelope from me with visible nervousness. He can sense the tension in the room. Everyone can. "Go ahead," I tell him. "Read the first document out loud." His hands shake slightly as he opens the envelope and pulls out the papers inside. He clears his throat. "This is a financial investigation report prepared by Dawson Associates Private Investigators, dated November 15th. Ethan has gone very still. The color is draining from his face. "It details the following debts in the name of Ethan James Morrison," the MC continues, his voice growing stronger as he reads. "Outstanding balance on online gambling accounts, $12,400. Credit card debt across 4 cards, $14,600. Personal loan from Quick Cash lending at 29% interest, $4,400. Total debt, $31,400. All accumulated between May and November of this year." The room erupts. Gasps, whispers, shocked exclamations. Olivia's mouth has fallen open. She's staring at Ethan like she's never seen him before. "That's private information," Ethan shouts, lunging toward me. 2 security guards I hired specifically for this moment step forward, blocking his path. He stops, breathing hard, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. "You had no right." "I had every right to protect my daughter," I say calmly. "Keep reading." The MC pulls out the second document, his eyes widening as he scans it. "This is a bank statement for a joint account opened on April 23rd at New Jersey Community Bank. Account holders, Ethan James Morrison and Maureen Louise Morrison." Maureen's smile has vanished. She's gripping the edge of the table. "The statement shows regular deposits from an account belonging to Olivia Remington." The MC reads, "Total deposits, $12,000. Account memo, honeymoon fund. However, withdrawals show transfers to..." He pauses, looking up at me for confirmation. I nod. He continues, "Transfers to pay down credit cards and gambling debts in Ethan Morrison's name." Olivia makes a sound like she's been punched. She trusted him with that money. "We talked about their honeymoon plans, the 2 weeks in Bali she was so excited about. Every month for the past year, she deposited $1,000 into what she thought was their shared savings account, money she earned herself from her junior associate position at the law firm. He stole it, him and his mother, together." "Ethan, what the hell is this?" Olivia's voice is shaking. She's still holding that maid's uniform in one hand, the papers from my envelope in the other. "You told me we had almost 15,000 saved. You showed me the balance. Baby, I can explain, Ethan starts, but Maureen cuts him off. This is ridiculous, she shouts at me. You're destroying your own daughter's wedding. What kind of mother does this? The kind who loves her daughter enough to show her the truth before it's too late, I reply. But we're not done. There's one more document. I nod to the MC. His hands are steadier now, like he's invested in seeing this through. He pulls out the final paper and actually smiles when he reads the header. This is a property deed, he announces, for a 3-bedroom duplex apartment at 210 West 79th Street, Manhattan. Purchase price, $4.2 million. Purchased this morning, November 28th. Owner of record, Olivia Marie Remington. The room goes silent again, but this time it's a different quality of silence. Shock has given way to understanding. People are starting to realize what they're witnessing. The deed includes a specific clause, the MC continues. This property is the sole and separate property of Olivia Marie Remington, not subject to any marital claims. It cannot be sold, mortgaged, or transferred without the express written consent of Eloise Margaret Remington for the duration of her lifetime. I walk over to Olivia and gently take the maid's uniform from her hands. She's trembling, tears streaming down her face, but I can see something changing in her eyes. The fog is lifting. Since we're giving practical gifts, I say, looking at Maureen, I thought my daughter should have something truly useful, a home of her own, worth more than everything the Morrison family owns combined, a place where she'll never have to worry about cleaning it properly or meeting anyone's degrading expectations. I turn to Ethan, holding up the uniform his mother gave my daughter. And you know, Maureen, you were right. This really is useful. Ethan's going to need it when he moves back in with you and has to earn his keep cleaning your house, since he clearly can't manage his own finances or his own life. Frank Morrison actually laughs at that. One short bark of laughter before he catches himself. Maureen whips around to glare at him, but for once, he doesn't look away. Olivia is staring at the deed in her hands, then at me, then at Ethan. I can see her mind working, processing everything, all the small red flags she ignored coming into sharp focus. You've been lying to me, she says to Ethan. Her voice is quiet but clear. About everything. The money, the gambling, your mother, all of it. Olivia, please, we can fix this. He reaches for her, but she steps back. Don't touch me. Those 3 words carry more power than anything else said tonight. Ethan freezes. Maureen is sputtering, trying to regain control of the situation. But it's too late. The room has turned against them. I can see it in the faces of the guests. Judgment, disgust, satisfaction from those who never liked Maureen's pretentious behavior during the planning process. My daughter looks at me, really looks at me, and I see recognition in her eyes, understanding. For months, she's been trying to prove she could make her own decisions, that she didn't need her overprotective mother interfering. She accused me of being controlling when I raised concerns about Ethan, of never thinking anyone was good enough for her. You knew, she whispers. You knew all of this. I suspected, I say honestly. So I verified. That's what mothers do, darling. We protect our children even when they don't think they need protecting. She nods slowly, then looks down at her left hand. The wedding ring Ethan placed there 3 hours ago catches the chandelier light. She stares at it for a long moment. Then she pulls it off. I met Ethan Morrison 18 months ago, though it feels like a lifetime now. It was a Tuesday evening in May, and Olivia called me from her office, her voice bubbling with excitement in a way I hadn't heard since her father died 4 years earlier. Mom, I met someone, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. At the pharmaceutical conference today. He's amazing, funny, charming, successful. We talked for 3 hours after my panel ended. I was happy for her, genuinely happy. After Thomas passed from pancreatic cancer, Olivia had thrown herself into her work, barely dating, barely living. She was 26 when we lost him, still young enough that grief hit her like a tsunami. She'd been her father's girl, his little shadow since she could walk. Watching her try to navigate life without him broke my heart in ways I didn't know were possible. So when she told me about this handsome pharmaceutical sales manager who made her laugh, who seemed interested in everything she had to say, who texted her sweet messages throughout the day, I wanted to believe it was real. I wanted my daughter to find what I had with Thomas. that rare, genuine partnership where someone sees you completely and loves you anyway. The first time I met Ethan was at dinner at my apartment in the Upper East Side. Olivia brought him 2 weeks after that conference. He arrived with flowers, complimented my home with what seemed like sincere appreciation, made polite conversation about his work. He was attractive in that all-American way, with an easy smile and confident handshake. I served the meal my housekeeper had prepared, and we talked about his career, his goals, his family in New Jersey. Everything seemed fine, pleasant, normal. But something nagged at me. The way his eyes swept over my apartment, lingering on the art, the furniture, the view of Central Park. Not admiring, calculating. The way he steered conversation toward Olivia's inheritance whenever possible, asking casual questions about the sale of my company, about my retirement plans, about whether I'd set Olivia up with trust funds. Questions that seemed innocent individually, but formed a pattern when taken together. Thomas used to tell me I had an instinct for reading people. It's what made me successful in business. I could sense when a potential investor was genuine or just going through the motions, when a business partner was trustworthy or planning to undercut me. That same instinct whispered warnings about Ethan Morrison, but I ignored it. I didn't want to be the cliché, overbearing mother who thought no one was good enough for her daughter. The engagement happened 6 months later, in November of last year. Ethan proposed during a weekend trip to the Hamptons, in front of all their friends, with a ring that must have cost at least $15,000. Money I later learned came from a credit card he was already struggling to pay off. Olivia called me immediately afterward, ecstatic, planning, already looking at venues. I smiled and congratulated her. I took her dress shopping, helped her create Pinterest boards, listened to her talk about color schemes and floral arrangements. But privately, I made a phone call to Dawson Associates, the private investigation firm I'd used during business acquisitions. I needed to know who my daughter was marrying. I needed facts, not just instincts. The report came back 3 weeks later. 28 pages of information that made my stomach turn. The gambling started small, apparently. Online poker during college, sports betting with friends. But it had escalated over the past 2 years. Ethan had accounts with 4 different online casinos, was placing bets he couldn't afford, chasing losses with increasingly desperate plays. The credit card debt was mounting. He'd taken out a high-interest personal loan from one of those predatory lenders that advertise on late-night television. I sat in my study for 2 hours after reading that report, staring out at Central Park, trying to decide what to do. If I told Olivia immediately, she'd be devastated. She'd also probably accuse me of interfering, of trying to control her life, of never letting her make her own choices. Our relationship had been strained since Thomas died. She resented my protectiveness, interpreted my concern as suffocation. But if I didn't tell her, she'd marry a man with serious financial and impulse control problems. A man who was lying to her about his debts, his habits, his character. I chose to tell her. I arranged lunch at her favorite restaurant, brought printed copies of the investigator's findings, and laid them out on the table between us. She looked at them for maybe 30 seconds before pushing them away. "I can't believe you did this," she said, her voice cold. "You investigated my fiancé? Like he's some kind of criminal? Olivia, he has $30,000 in debt he hasn't told you about. He told me he had some student loans he was paying off," she interrupted. "Everyone has debt, Mom. Not everyone grew up with a trust fund. This isn't student loans. Look at the dates, look at the sources. Online gambling, cash advances, payday loans." "Stop." She stood up, grabbed her purse. "I know what this is really about. You can't let me go. You can't stand that I'm building a life that doesn't revolve around you. Dad would never have done this." That cut deep, using Thomas against me, weaponizing his memory. "Your father would have wanted you protected," I said quietly. "He would have done the same thing. No, he would have trusted my judgment. He would have believed I could make my own decisions." She threw her napkin on the table. "Ethan's already explained his financial situation to me. He's working on it. He doesn't hide things from me like you apparently think. Maybe you should focus on your own life instead of trying to run mine." She left me sitting there with a $100 lunch neither of us had eaten and a stack of evidence she refused to acknowledge. We barely spoke for 2 months after that. She texted updates about the wedding planning, but kept me at arm's length. I wasn't included in dress fittings anymore. She stopped asking my opinion on vendors. When I tried to bring up the prenuptial agreement my attorney had prepared, she accused me of assuming her marriage would fail before it even started. Meanwhile, I watched Maureen Morrison insert herself into every aspect of the wedding. Olivia started mentioning her constantly. Maureen thought they should have the reception at a local banquet hall instead of the plaza. Maureen suggested simple centerpieces instead of the elaborate floral arrangements we'd discussed. Maureen believed courthouse weddings were more meaningful than big productions. Always Maureen's opinion, Maureen's values, Maureen's traditions. I met Maureen properly at a family dinner Olivia organized in March, 8 months before the wedding. It was held at a restaurant in Hoboken, Morrison family territory. Frank Morrison was quiet, deferring to his wife on every topic. Maureen dominated the conversation, telling stories that always positioned her as the hero or the victim. She made pointed comments about families who really worked for what they had, versus those who got lucky with business. She suggested Olivia was a bit spoiled, but that marriage would teach her about real life. Ethan laughed at his mother's comments, agreed with her assessments, never once defended Olivia. I watched my daughter's face during that dinner, saw her try to laugh along, to fit in, to prove she could handle this family she was marrying into. She excused herself to the bathroom twice. Both times she came back with red-rimmed eyes. When I drove her back to her apartment that night, I tried one more time. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "About him?" "I love him, Mom." Love isn't always enough. Not when someone won't stand up for you. Not when their family treats you like what? Like I need to prove myself? Maybe I do. Maybe I've had everything handed to me, and it's time I learned what real life is like. Real life isn't letting people demean you, I said. Your father and I raised you to know your worth. Dad's gone, she said flatly, and you can't protect me from everything anymore. I'm 27 years old. I'm getting married. Either support me or don't, but stop trying to sabotage this. After that conversation, I made a decision. I couldn't stop this wedding, but I could prepare for the fallout. I could make sure that when Olivia finally saw the truth, she'd have options. She'd have power. She'd have a way out that didn't leave her financially or emotionally destroyed. I bought the apartment on West 79th Street in July. 3 bedrooms, original pre-war details, Central Park views. I had it inspected, renovated, furnished with pieces I knew Olivia would love. I had the deed drawn up with those specific clauses protecting it as her sole property. I kept it secret, planning to give it to her on her first anniversary, a symbol of stability and independence in her marriage. But I also kept the investigator on retainer, monthly updates on Ethan's activities. The debt kept growing. The gambling continued. In September, the investigator discovered the joint account with Maureen. That's when I understood this wasn't just about a man with poor impulse control. This was about a family actively planning to exploit my daughter's resources. I updated my plan. The apartment would be revealed sooner if needed, and I'd make sure Olivia knew everything before the marriage was legally complicated by time and shared assets. I just didn't know the trigger would be a maid's uniform at her own wedding reception. When I watched Maureen hand that box to Olivia tonight, when I saw my daughter's face crumble as she pulled out that degrading costume, when I heard Ethan laugh and validate his mother's cruelty, I knew the moment had come. Sometimes love means letting your child fall, but it also means being there to catch them with evidence, resources, and options when they finally realize they're falling. The months between that disastrous family dinner in Hoboken and the wedding were like watching a slow-motion car crash. I saw it coming, knew the impact would be devastating, but couldn't stop it without pushing Olivia further away. So I documented everything, prepared contingencies, and waited. In April, 3 months after our fight about the investigation report, Olivia asked me to meet her for coffee. She looked tired, thinner than usual, with dark circles under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. We sat in a cafe near her law firm, the kind of place where young professionals grabbed overpriced lattes between meetings. "I want to apologize," she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it, "for what I said about Dad. That wasn't fair." "You were angry," I replied. "I understand." "I'm still angry," she admitted, "but I also know you were trying to protect me. You always are. She finally looked up at me. Ethan and I talked about the debt. He's working with a financial counselor. He's stopped the gambling. We're on a payment plan. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe he'd actually changed, but I'd seen the updated investigator's report from 3 days earlier. New charges on 2 of the credit cards. Another $500 lost on an online betting site. He wasn't working with any counselor. He was lying to her. That's good, I said carefully. I'm glad he's addressing it. I need you to try with him, Mom. With his family. They're going to be my family too. She reached across the table, took my hand. Maureen can be a lot, I know, but she means well. She's just very traditional about gender roles and marriage. Traditional. That's what Olivia called it. I called it controlling, demeaning, and rooted in deep insecurity. But I squeezed my daughter's hand and nodded. I'll try, I promised. What I didn't tell her was that trying meant different things to different people. I would try to be civil. I would try to maintain peace until the wedding. But I would also try to gather enough evidence that when this marriage inevitably showed its cracks, Olivia would have irrefutable proof that my concerns were never about control. They were about love. The wedding planning intensified. Maureen appointed herself co-coordinator without anyone actually asking her to. She showed up at vendor meetings Olivia had scheduled, contradicting decisions we'd made, suggesting more economical alternatives. When Olivia selected a jazz quartet for the cocktail hour, Maureen brought brochures for a cousin who did DJ work on the side. When we chose orchid centerpieces, she advocated for carnations because they were just as pretty for a fraction of the cost. It's not her money, Olivia said to me after one particularly frustrating florist appointment where Maureen had spent 40 minutes arguing about rose varieties. Why does she care so much about the budget? Because she wants control, I said, and because she resents that you have resources she never had. Olivia sighed. She told me last week that she hopes marriage teaches me humility. What does that even mean? It meant Maureen wanted to see my daughter brought down, diminished, made to feel less than. But I couldn't say that without starting another fight. It means she's projecting her own experiences onto you, I said instead. Just remember, this is your wedding. Your choices matter. But they didn't. Not really. Because Ethan always sided with his mother. Every single time. When Olivia wanted to hire a videographer Maureen deemed too expensive, Ethan suggested they compromise with Maureen's choice. When Olivia selected a menu with Chilean sea base, Ethan wondered if chicken might be more universally appealing, like his mother had mentioned. Every decision became a negotiation where Olivia's preferences were positioned as excessive or impractical. I watched my confident, capable daughter become smaller with each concession. She stopped sharing her ideas first, instead asking what Ethan and his mother thought before committing to anything. She apologized constantly for things that didn't require apologies. She started sentences with, "I know this might be too much, but," when discussing perfectly reasonable wedding elements. In June, I took her to lunch at the Modern, just the two of us. She picked at her food, barely eating. "Talk to me," I said. "Really talk to me. How are you feeling about everything?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the sculpture garden. "Tired," she finally said. "I'm so tired, Mom. Planning this wedding feels like a battle. Every single choice is questioned or criticized. Maureen has an opinion about everything, and Ethan always agrees with her." "Then push back," I urged. "This is your wedding. Tell them no." "I have," she said, her voice small. "But then Ethan gets this look, like I'm being difficult, like I'm the problem. And Maureen does this thing where she sighs and says she's just trying to help, that she only wants what's best for us, that maybe I'm too stressed to think clearly." She looked at me then, and I saw tears threatening. Am I being a bridezilla? Am I the one being unreasonable? My heart broke. This brilliant young woman who'd graduated summa cum laude from Columbia Law, who argued cases in front of judges, who'd inherited my business acumen and her father's sharp mind, was questioning her own sanity because an insecure woman and her spineless son were gaslighting her. "You are not unreasonable," I said firmly. "You are being manipulated. There's a difference. Don't start," she warned. "Please, I can't do another fight about Ethan right now." So I didn't. Instead, I paid for lunch, drove her back to her office, and called my investigator with new instructions. I wanted to know everything about Maureen Morrison. Her finances, her history, her patterns. If she was inserting herself this aggressively into Olivia's life now, it would only get worse after the wedding. The report came back 2 weeks later. Maureen had been a secretary at a law firm when she met Frank Morrison. She got pregnant with Ethan 3 months into dating, they married quickly, and she quit working immediately. She'd spent the next 30-plus years as a homemaker, but not by choice initially, according to interviews with former neighbors. She'd wanted to go back to work when Ethan started school, but Frank's income was barely enough for one household. She talked about getting her real estate license, about starting a catering business, about doing something with her life beyond PTA meetings and church bake sales, but nothing ever materialized. She stayed home, grew resentful, and poured all her unrealized ambitions into Ethan. The investigator found old social media posts where she bragged about his accomplishments with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. His high school football trophies, his college acceptance, his first job. She lived through him because she had nothing else. And now Ethan was marrying a woman who had everything Maureen never did. Education, career, financial independence, opportunities. Of course she resented Olivia. My daughter represented every path Maureen didn't take, every choice she didn't make, every dream she'd abandoned. This wasn't about tradition or family values. This was about a bitter woman trying to tear down someone she envied. I showed the report to my attorney, Patricia Chen, who'd been handling my family's legal matters for 15 years. "This woman is going to make Olivia's life miserable," Patricia said after reading it. "You know that, right? This doesn't end at the wedding." "I know," I said. "That's why I need the prenuptial agreement to be airtight, and I need contingency plans." Patricia drew up documents that protected everything: Olivia's inheritance, her future earnings, her assets. Ethan would have zero claim to anything Olivia brought into the marriage or acquired during it. The apartment I'd purchased would be her sole property, with restrictions that prevented Ethan from ever benefiting from it. Getting Olivia to sign was harder. She resisted for weeks, calling it pessimistic and unromantic, but I'd learned to pick my battles. I positioned it as standard practice, something everyone with assets did, not a referendum on her relationship. Eventually, reluctantly, she signed. Ethan's lawyer tried to negotiate better terms, wanted clauses about shared property, about Ethan's contributions to household expenses being recognized. Patricia shut down every attempt. Either he signed as written or there was no wedding. He signed, but the investigators' reports showed he immediately told Maureen about the prenup, and the reports showed Maureen's internet search history in the days that followed. How to contest prenuptial agreements. Proving financial coercion. Establishing marital property rights. She was already planning ways around it. By August, 2 months before the wedding, the situation had deteriorated further. Olivia stopped by my apartment one evening without calling first. I was in my study reading when she appeared in the doorway, mascara streaked down her face. "What happened?" I asked, immediately standing. She collapsed into the chair across from my desk, sobbing. It took 10 minutes for her to calm down enough to speak coherently. "We had dinner at Ethan's parents' house," she finally managed. "Just the 4 of us. Maureen made this whole meal, pot roast and potatoes and green beans. It was fine. Good, actually. But then at the end, she asked me to help clean up." "That seems reasonable," I said carefully. "It would be, except Frank and Ethan went to watch football in the living room. It was just me and Maureen in the kitchen." She wiped her eyes. She started giving me instructions: how to scrape the plates properly, how to load the dishwasher her way, how to wrap leftovers. But it wasn't helpful instruction, Mom. It was condescending, like I was a child who didn't know basic tasks. "What did you say?" I told her I had a system that worked for me, and she laughed. Fresh tears spilled over. She actually laughed and said, "Well, you're going to need to learn the right way now. Can't have my son living in a messy house because his wife doesn't know how to clean properly." I felt rage building, but kept my voice calm. "How did Ethan react when you told him?" "That's the thing," Olivia said miserably. "When we got in the car, I tried to explain how uncomfortable it made me, how demeaning it felt, and he told me I was overreacting, that his mom was just trying to help, that maybe I was being too sensitive because I'd never had to do housework growing up." "You've lived independently for 6 years," I said. "You maintain your own apartment perfectly well." "I know, but he made it sound like I've had maids my whole life and don't understand normal responsibilities." She looked at me with desperate eyes. Do you think I'm spoiled? I think you're being set up, I said. Maureen is establishing a dynamic where she's the authority and you're the student, and Ethan is supporting it instead of defending you. Here we go, Olivia said, standing up. I knew you'd turn this into another referendum on my relationship. I'm not. Yes, you are. Every single time I have a problem, you use it as evidence that I shouldn't marry Ethan. You can't just support me. You can't just listen without an agenda. My agenda is your happiness and safety, I said. No, your agenda is being right, proving that you know better than me. She headed toward the door. I shouldn't have come here. Olivia, wait. But she was gone, leaving me alone with the echo of the door closing and the certainty that things were going to get much worse before they got better. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding, on a Sunday afternoon I'll never forget. Olivia had been radio silent for 4 days after our last argument, communicating only through terse text messages about final wedding logistics. I gave her space, respecting her need for distance, even as worry gnawed at me constantly. Then my phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. Olivia's name on the screen. I answered on the first ring. Mom? Her voice was shaking. Can I come over? Of course. Are you okay? No, she said simply. I'm not okay. She arrived 20 minutes later, still in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I'd rarely seen her so undone. She walked past me into the living room and sat on the couch, staring at her hands. I sat beside her and waited. After years of parenting, I'd learned that sometimes silence is the best invitation to speak. Ethan and I had a fight last night, she finally said. A big one. About money. My stomach tightened. What happened? I suggested we hire a cleaning service to come twice a week after we're married. I work 60-hour weeks at the firm. He works full-time too. It seemed practical. She laughed bitterly. He exploded. Said it was a waste of money, that his mother never needed help, that I needed to learn to manage a household like a real wife. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. So I said maybe if he contributed more to household expenses, we could afford it. I make twice what he makes, Mom. I've been paying for most of our dates, most of the wedding expenses beyond what you covered, most of everything. And he got so angry. She looked at me then, fear in her eyes. He didn't hit me or anything, but he slammed his hand on the table so hard the dishes jumped. He said I was emasculating him by bringing up money, that I was just like you, thinking I was better than everyone because of my bank account. Every protective instinct I had roared to life, but I forced myself to remain calm. What did you do? I left, went back to my apartment. He's been calling and texting all morning, apologizing, saying he was just stressed about the wedding, that he didn't mean it. She pulled out her phone, showed me the messages. Dozens of them. I'm sorry, baby. I love you. Please don't do this. My mom said I overreacted. We can talk about the cleaning service, my mom said, always back to Maureen. Olivia, look at me, I said gently. She did, tears streaming down her face. I need you to hear something, and I need you to really listen. Not as your mother trying to control you, but as a woman who's lived longer and seen more. Can you do that? She nodded. This isn't going to get better after the wedding. It's going to get worse. I held up my hand when she started to protest. Let me finish. Right now, Ethan is still trying to win you. He's still on his best behavior, relatively speaking, but you're already seeing glimpses of who he becomes when he's challenged, when his authority is questioned, when his mother's influence is threatened. He's under a lot of stress. Stress reveals character. It doesn't create it, I interrupted. A good partner doesn't slam tables and accuse you of emasculation when you suggest hiring help. A good partner doesn't side with his mother over his wife's legitimate feelings. A good partner doesn't hide $30,000 in gambling debt. He's paying that off. He's not. I stood, went to my study, and returned with a folder. The latest investigators' report, dated 3 days earlier. He's accumulated another $2,000 in the past month. Online poker, sports betting. He's not in counseling. He's not on a payment plan. He's lying to you, Olivia. He's been lying this entire time. She took the folder with trembling hands, opened it, scanned the highlighted sections. Bank statements, screenshots of gambling accounts, credit card bills, All the evidence she'd refused to see 6 months ago, now impossible to deny. "Why do you keep doing this?" she whispered. "Why do you keep investigating him?" "Because someone has to protect you," I said. "Because you're my daughter, and I love you more than anything in this world. Because I watched my brilliant, confident girl become smaller and smaller over these past months, questioning herself, apologizing for existing, and I couldn't stand by and do nothing." She was crying harder now, the folder shaking in her hands. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. Everything's paid for. Everyone's invited. I can't just—" "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "You can absolutely call it off. I'll handle the vendors, the guests, everything. Your only job is to decide if this is the life you want, because this is what it will be, Olivia. Him choosing his mother over you. Him lying about money. Him making you feel small when you voice legitimate concerns. This is your future, if you marry him." She looked at the folder again, at the irrefutable evidence of Ethan's deception. Then she looked at me. "I feel so stupid," she said. "Everyone's going to know I was stupid enough to almost marry him." "You're not stupid. You're in love. Or you thought you were." I sat beside her again, put my arm around her shoulders. "Love makes us want to believe the best in people. That's not stupidity. That's hope. But hope without wisdom is dangerous." We sat like that for a long time, her crying, me holding her, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. Finally, she pulled away, wiped her eyes, and took a deep breath. "I need to think," she said. "I can't make this decision right now. My head is too messy." "Take all the time you need," I said, though privately I knew time was running short. 3 weeks until a wedding that would legally bind her to a man who was already showing signs of financial irresponsibility and emotional manipulation. She stood to leave, then turned back. "Mom, if I decide to go through with it, will you still be there? At the wedding?" The question broke my heart. After everything, she still thought I might abandon her. "I will always be there," I promised. "Even when you make choices I don't agree with. Even when you don't want my help. I will always be there." She nodded and left. I watched from my window as she got into her car and drove away, hoping desperately that she would find the strength to walk away from this disaster before it was too late. But I also knew my daughter, knew her determination to prove her independence, her fear of being seen as giving up, her deep desire to believe that love could overcome practical problems. So I made preparations. I accelerated the apartment purchase. I had my attorney finalize every document. I instructed my investigator to provide daily updates until the wedding. And I planned for contingencies. Because if Olivia was going to walk into this marriage despite every red flag, despite every warning, despite every piece of evidence, then I was going to make damn sure she had a way out when she finally woke up. I just hoped that moment would come before too much damage was done. The 3 weeks between that conversation and the wedding passed in a blur of silence and preparation. Olivia didn't call off the engagement. She barely spoke to me at all, sending only necessary updates through text. Dress fitting confirmed. Final head count to caterer. Rehearsal dinner. Friday at 6. I went through the motions of being the supportive mother. Confirmed my +1 was declined, as I'd been widowed. Approved the final menu selections. Transferred the remaining balance to the plaza, all while watching my daughter make what I knew was a catastrophic mistake. The rehearsal dinner was held at a mid-range Italian restaurant in New Jersey. Maureen's choice. She'd insisted on hosting, though I suspected Frank's retirement account was footing the bill. The room was decorated with red and white checkered tablecloths and fake grapevines, attempting ambiance but achieving only kitsch. I arrived alone, wearing a simple black dress, determined to be cordial. Maureen greeted me at the door with air kisses that didn't touch my cheeks and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eloise, so glad you could make it," she said, her tone suggesting she wished I hadn't. "We're keeping things nice and simple tonight. Family style, the way real families eat together." The implication that my family wasn't real hung in the air. I smiled politely and found my assigned seat at the far end of the table, as far from the happy couple as possible, while still technically being present. Olivia looked beautiful, but exhausted. Her engagement ring caught the light as she nervously twisted it around her finger, a gesture I recognized from her childhood whenever she was anxious. Ethan sat beside her, one arm possessively around her shoulders, looking pleased with himself in a way that made my skin crawl. The dinner progressed with painful small talk. Maureen dominated conversation, telling embarrassing stories about Ethan's childhood that made him laugh and Olivia smile uncomfortably. Frank said almost nothing, methodically eating his chicken parmesan and drinking wine faster than seemed advisable. Then came the toasts. Maureen stood, tapping her glass with unnecessary force. "I want to say a few words about my son and his beautiful bride," she began. The beautiful was delivered with the faintest edge of insincerity. Ethan has always been my pride and joy. Top of his class, star athlete, successful career. He could have had any girl he wanted. I saw Olivia flinch slightly. Could have had. Past tense. As if she was somehow a consolation prize. But he chose Olivia, Maureen continued. And I know she's going to make him very happy. Once she learns what being a wife really means. She laughed, and several of Ethan's relatives joined in. "I've been married to Frank for 34 years. I know what it takes. Sacrifice, service, putting your husband's needs first. I'm sure Olivia will figure it out eventually." The insult was wrapped in humor, but it was an insult nonetheless. I watched my daughter's face turn red, watched her look down at her plate, watched Ethan squeeze her shoulder in what was probably meant to be reassurance, but looked more like control. No one challenged Maureen. Not Frank, who stared into his wine glass. Not Ethan, who smiled like his mother had said something endearing. Not any of the relatives who probably witnessed this dynamic regularly and had learned not to interfere. But I'd had enough. I stood, picking up my wine glass. The table went quiet. "I'd like to add something," I said pleasantly. "If I may." Maureen's smile tightened, but she gestured magnanimously for me to continue. "I've known Olivia for 28 years, I began. Since the moment she was born, actually. And in those 28 years, I've watched her become an extraordinary woman. Summa cum laude from Columbia Law, junior partner track at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. Intelligent, compassionate, accomplished." I looked directly at my daughter. She doesn't need to learn what being a wife means. She already knows what being a partner means, what being an equal means, what being respected means. And any man lucky enough to marry her should spend every day earning the privilege of being her husband, not training her to serve him. The silence that followed was deafening. Maureen's face had gone red. Ethan looked angry, but Olivia was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Gratitude, embarrassment, realization. "Well," Maureen said icily, "I suppose we all have different ideas about marriage. Some of us believe in traditional values, and some of us believe in mutual respect," I replied calmly. "To each their own." I sat down. The dinner continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations were more subdued. Maureen kept shooting daggers at me with her eyes. Olivia remained quiet, barely touching her food. When the evening finally ended, I approached my daughter at the door. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said softly. "I love you." She nodded, squeezed my hand briefly, and left with Ethan. I watched them go, his hand at the small of her back, guiding her like she was property, and I felt dread settle deep in my bones. That night, I barely slept. I kept reaching for my phone, wanting to call Olivia, wanting to beg her one more time to reconsider. But I knew it was too late. The wedding was hours away. The machine was already in motion. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. The plaza's ballroom was stunning with the floral arrangements we'd chosen. The string quartet played perfectly, and Olivia looked absolutely breathtaking in her Vera Wang gown. For a moment, when I watched her walk down the aisle, I let myself hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Ethan would prove himself worthy. Maybe marriage would bring out the best in him. Then I saw him check his watch during the vows. A quick glance, barely noticeable to anyone not watching closely. But I was watching. And that tiny gesture told me everything. He was already bored, already thinking about something else, already taking her for granted. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Ethan kissed her quickly, perfunctorily, then immediately turned to accept congratulations from his mother in the front row. Maureen was crying tears of joy, like she'd just won some kind of competition. The reception began pleasantly enough. The cocktail hour was elegant, the ballroom transition was seamless, and dinner service was impeccable. I sat at the main table, making polite conversation with Frank, who seemed relieved to have someone to talk to besides his wife. "She means well," he said quietly at one point, watching Maureen circulate among guests. "She's just protective of Ethan." "Protective or controlling?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "You seem like a smart woman, Eloise." "I think you already know the answer to that." Then came the gift opening, a tradition I'd advised against, but Maureen had insisted upon. "It's what our family does," she'd declared. And once again, Ethan had supported his mother over Olivia's preference for privacy. The first few gifts were standard: crystal vases, kitchen appliances, checks and greeting cards. Olivia smiled and thanked each giver, playing her role perfectly. Then Maureen stood, carrying a large silver-wrapped box, her face alight with malicious excitement. "This one's from me," she announced into the microphone the MC handed her. "Something every new bride needs." I felt my stomach drop even before Olivia opened it. Some instinct warned me that whatever was in that box would be designed to hurt. Olivia tore off the wrapping, opened the box, and pulled out white fabric. An apron first, then a matching cap, then a complete maid's uniform, the kind worn in old movies by domestic servants, the kind designed to diminish and demean. The ballroom fell silent. I could see confusion on Olivia's face, could see her trying to process what she was holding, trying to understand if this was somehow a joke she wasn't getting. Then Ethan laughed. That same careless laugh I'd heard 100 times, the laugh of a man who'd never had to consider anyone's feelings but his own. "Perfect, Mom," he said loudly. "That's actually brilliant. She's definitely going to need that." He turned to Olivia, oblivious to the tears forming in her eyes. "My mom was already worried you wouldn't know how to take care of our house properly, babe. This is perfect timing." And there it was, the moment I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. The mask dropped, the truth revealed, not gradually, not subtly, but spectacularly, in front of 200 witnesses. Maureen started clapping, delighted with herself. "I just thought it would be practical. Every new bride needs to learn her responsibilities. I wore one just like it for the first 5 years of my marriage, didn't I, Frank?" Frank looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him, but he said nothing. 34 years of being married to Maureen had taught him that intervention was futile. I watched a tear slide down Olivia's cheek, cutting through her expensive makeup. She was clutching that uniform, her knuckles white, her body trembling. She looked at me across the table, and I saw it. The moment of recognition. The realization that everything I'd warned her about was true. This was it. This was my moment. I stood slowly, calmly, smoothing down my navy Chanel suit. Every eye in the room turned to me. I signaled the maitre d', who immediately understood and disappeared toward the back office where I'd secured certain items before the ceremony. "Maureen," I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom with perfect clarity. "What an interesting tradition, giving household uniforms as wedding gifts. How very thoughtful of you." She beamed, completely missing the steel beneath my polite tone. "I just believe in practical gifts. None of this crystal and china nonsense. Real life requires real work." I couldn't agree more about the value of practical, revealing gifts, I continued. "In fact, I brought something quite practical myself, something that reveals a great deal." I saw Ethan's smile falter. Good. He should be worried. The maitre d' returned with the thick manila envelope I'd entrusted to hotel security hours earlier. He handed it to me with a discreet nod. I held it, feeling its weight, savoring this moment I'd been planning for weeks. "Since we're sharing gifts that teach important lessons," I said, looking directly at Maureen, "I thought it would be appropriate to open mine now as well. Olivia, darling, would you ask the Master of Ceremonies to read what's inside? I think everyone should hear this." Olivia was staring at me, mascara smudged, still clutching that degrading uniform. She nodded slowly, understanding that something significant was about to happen. The MC took the envelope from me with visible nervousness. The tension in the room was palpable. "Read the first document," I instructed, out loud. His hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope and pulled out the papers inside. He cleared his throat. "This is a financial investigation report prepared by Dawson Associates Private Investigators, dated November 15th. It details the following debts in the name of Ethan James Morrison. Outstanding balance on online gambling accounts, $12,400. Credit card debt across 4 cards, $14,600. Personal loan from Quick Cash Lending at 29% interest, $4,400. Total debt, $31,400. All accumulated between May and November of this year. The ballroom exploded with gasps and whispers. Olivia's mouth fell open. Ethan went white as snow. "That's private information," Ethan shouted, moving toward me. The security guards I'd hired stepped forward, blocking his path. "You had no right." "I had every right to protect my daughter," I said calmly. "Keep reading." The MC pulled out the second document, his eyes widening as he scanned it. "This is a bank statement for a joint account opened on April 23rd at New Jersey Community Bank. Account holders, Ethan James Morrison and Maureen Louise Morrison. The statement shows regular deposits from an account belonging to Olivia Remington. Total deposits, $12,000. Account memo, honeymoon fund." Olivia made a sound like she'd been physically struck. "However," the MC continued, "withdrawals show transfers to pay down credit cards and gambling debts in Ethan Morrison's name. The honeymoon fund account currently has a balance of $473. My daughter was shaking, staring at Ethan with dawning horror. He'd stolen from her. Him and his mother, together, systematically stealing money she'd saved for their future. "Ethan, what the hell is this?" Olivia's voice was barely steady. "You told me we had almost $15,000 saved. You showed me statements." "Baby, I can explain," he started, but Maureen cut him off. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she shrieked at me. "You're destroying your own daughter's wedding. What kind of mother does this?" "The kind who loves her daughter enough to show her the truth before it's too late," I replied evenly. "But we're not finished. There's one more document." The MC pulled out the final paper and actually smiled when he read it. "This is a property deed for a 3-bedroom duplex apartment at 210 West 79th Street, Manhattan. Purchase price, $4.2 million. Purchased this morning, November 28th. Owner of record, Olivia Marie Remington." Silence again, but different this time. People were beginning to understand what they were witnessing. "The deed includes a specific clause," he read. "This property is the sole and separate property of Olivia Marie Remington, not subject to any marital claims. It cannot be sold, mortgaged, or transferred without the express written consent of Eloise Margaret Remington for the duration of her lifetime." I walked over to Olivia and gently took the maid's uniform from her trembling hands. "Since we're giving practical gifts," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I thought my daughter should have something truly useful, a home of her own, worth more than everything the Morrison family owns combined. A place where she'll never have to worry about cleaning it properly or meeting anyone's degrading expectations." I turned to Ethan, holding up the uniform his mother had given my daughter. "And you know, Maureen, you were right. This really is useful. Ethan's going to need it when he moves back in with you and has to earn his keep, since he clearly can't manage his own finances or his own life." Frank Morrison actually laughed. One short, sharp bark of laughter before he caught himself. Maureen whipped around to glare at him, but for the first time in probably decades, he didn't look away. Olivia was staring at the deed, then at me, then at Ethan. I could see everything clicking into place. Every small warning sign she'd ignored, every red flag she'd explained away, every moment of doubt she'd suppressed. "You've been lying to me," she said to Ethan. Her voice was quiet, but clear enough to carry. "About everything. The money, the gambling, your mother, all of it. Olivia, please, we can fix this." He reached for her. "Don't touch me." Those 3 words held more power than anything else spoken that evening. Ethan froze. Maureen sputtered, trying to regain control, but it was far too late. My daughter looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw recognition in her eyes, understanding, gratitude, and love. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew all of this." "I suspected," I said honestly. "So I verified." "That's what mothers do, darling. We protect our children, even when they don't think they need protecting." She nodded slowly. Then she looked down at her left hand at the wedding ring Ethan had placed there just 3 hours ago, and she pulled it off. The moment Olivia removed that ring, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. She held it between her thumb and forefinger, staring at it like she'd never seen it before. Then she turned to Ethan, her face composed, despite the tears still streaming down her cheeks. "We were married 3 hours ago," she said, her voice steady now. "We have 72 hours to file for annulment in New York without complicating factors. Correct, Mom?" Pride swelled in my chest. Even in crisis, my daughter's legal mind was working. "My attorney is waiting outside," I confirmed, documents already prepared. Ethan's face contorted with panic. "Olivia, don't do this. I love you. We can work through this." "You love my money," she interrupted. "You love the idea of what I could provide for you. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied about $30,000 in debt. You wouldn't have stolen $12,000 from our honeymoon fund. You wouldn't have let your mother humiliate me at my own wedding." She placed the ring on the table in front of him with a soft click that somehow sounded final. "And you definitely wouldn't have laughed when she gave me a maid's uniform and told me I needed to learn my place." Maureen finally found her voice, shrill and desperate. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you, after welcoming you into our family—" "Welcoming?" Olivia's laugh was bitter. "You've spent 8 months belittling me, criticizing my choices, and positioning yourself as superior because you gave up your entire identity to serve a man. That's not welcoming. That's trying to break me down so I'd be as miserable as you are." The words hit Maureen like physical blows. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Frank Morrison stood up, pulled his wallet from his jacket, and placed $200 on the table. He looked at his wife with an expression of weary resignation. "I'm going to Arizona," he said quietly. "My brother's been asking me to visit for 5 years. I think I'll stay a while, maybe permanently." "Frank, sit down," Maureen commanded. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Maureen. I've been embarrassed for 34 years. Watching you control Ethan, watching you try to control his wife, watching you turn into everything I promised myself I'd never become." He looked at Olivia. "I'm sorry. You deserved better than this family." He walked out, just like that. 34 years of marriage ended in a ballroom at the plaza, collateral damage to Maureen's cruelty. Maureen was sputtering, trying to call him back, but he was gone. She turned her fury on me instead. "This is your fault. You poisoned her against us. You couldn't stand that your daughter found happiness without you." "My daughter found a liar with a gambling addiction and a controlling mother," I said calmly. "I simply provided her with facts. What she does with those facts is her choice." Olivia turned to the 200 guests, most of whom were still sitting in stunned silence, some recording on their phones. "I apologize for the disruption to what should have been a celebration," she said, her voice clear and professional. "Obviously, there will be no marriage. The reception is over. Thank you all for coming." She picked up her skirt and walked toward the exit. I followed immediately, leaving Ethan standing at the table, Maureen shrieking about lawyers and lawsuits, and 200 witnesses who'd just seen the most dramatic wedding implosion in Plaza Hotel history. My attorney, Patricia Chen, was indeed waiting outside with her leather portfolio. She took one look at Olivia's face and opened the folder. "Standard annulment papers," Patricia said efficiently. "Grounds are fraud and misrepresentation regarding financial status. With the investigator's report as evidence, it'll be approved within 48 hours." Olivia signed without hesitation. Her hand didn't shake. She'd moved past shock into clarity. That focused determination I recognized from when she was preparing for trial. "The prenup," Olivia asked. "Means he gets nothing," Patricia confirmed. "Not the gifts? Not any claim to your assets? Nothing. You walk away clean. And the apartment? Yours free and clear. I'll have the keys delivered tomorrow." Patricia smiled slightly. "Your mother thinks of everything." Olivia looked at me then, really looked at me, and started crying again. But these weren't tears of humiliation or confusion. These were tears of relief. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm so sorry I wasted all this money on a wedding to a man who—" "Stop," I said firmly, pulling her into my arms. "You have nothing to apologize for. You wanted to believe in love. You wanted to prove you could make your own choices. Those instincts aren't wrong. You just picked the wrong person to trust. How did you know? She asked into my shoulder. How did you know it would come to this? Because I've lived longer than you. Because I've seen men like Ethan before. And because I know what a good partnership looks like. Your father and I built something equal, something mutual. He never would have let his mother treat me the way Maureen treated you. He never would have hidden debt or stolen from our future. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I miss him so much. He would have seen through Ethan immediately. Yes, he would have, I agreed. But he also would have trusted you to figure it out eventually. And you did. We left through the side entrance to avoid any remaining guests or confrontations. My driver was waiting. I instructed him to take us to my apartment. I can't go back to my place, Olivia said as we drove through Manhattan. Ethan has a key. He has stuff there. You're staying with me tonight, I said. Tomorrow we'll have the locks changed and his belongings boxed up. Patricia's team will handle it. I feel so stupid, she said quietly, staring out the window at the city lights. Everyone's going to know. It'll be all over social media by morning. The lawyer who was too dumb to see she was marrying a con artist. You're not stupid. You're human. And anyone who judges you for believing in someone's potential rather than their reality has never been in love. She was quiet for a moment. The apartment, $4.2 million. Mom, that's an investment in your future, I interrupted. In your independence. In making sure you never feel trapped or dependent on anyone. Your father and I always planned to give you significant assets when you married. The timing simply changed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll never ignore your intuition again. Say you'll trust yourself. Say you'll remember that love should add to your life, not diminish it. I will, she promised. I absolutely will. The annulment was processed in 46 hours. Ethan tried calling 17 times that first day. By day 3, he'd stopped. The investigator reported that he'd moved back in with Maureen, who was now dealing with her own crisis as Frank filed for divorce from Arizona. Olivia moved into the duplex 2 weeks later. We spent 3 days decorating it together, and this time she made every decision. Bold colors, modern furniture, art that spoke to her. It was her space, her sanctuary, her new beginning. She went back to work the following Monday. Some colleagues whispered, but most were supportive. Within a month, she'd secured a major case victory and caught the attention of a senior partner who put her on track for early promotion. 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, we had dinner at her place. She'd cooked, actually cooked, not because anyone expected it, but because she wanted to learn. The meal was simple but good, and we ate by the windows overlooking Central Park. I saw Ethan's LinkedIn, she mentioned casually. He's working for a different pharmaceutical company. Took a pay cut. And Maureen? Still posting on Facebook about ungrateful young people and the importance of family values. Olivia smiled. Frank sent me a friend request. He's living in Tucson, working part-time at his brother's auto shop. He looks happier in his photos than I ever saw him in person. Good for him, I said. It's never too late to choose yourself. Is that what I did? She asked. Chose myself? You chose freedom, I corrected. You chose truth. You chose dignity. That's what we all should choose, regardless of age. She raised her wine glass. To choices. And to mothers who have your back, even when you're too stubborn to see it. I clinked my glass against hers. To daughters who are brave enough to start over. The maid's uniform that started everything sits framed in her home office now, with a small plaque underneath. Remember, never ignore your instincts. When colleagues ask about it during video calls, she tells the story without shame. It's become her origin story, the moment she learned that sometimes the greatest gift is the truth, even when it's wrapped in humiliation. And sometimes the greatest love is a mother who refuses to watch her daughter settle for less than she deserves, even when it means being called controlling, interfering, or worse. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. That's what mothers do. We protect, we prepare, and when the moment comes, we act. Because love isn't just about supporting decisions. Sometimes it's about having the courage to reveal the truth and trusting that your child is strong enough to handle it. Olivia was. She is. She always will be. And I'll always be here, ready with evidence, resources, and unconditional love whenever she needs me. That's the real gift I gave her that day. Not just an apartment, not just exposure of lies, but the knowledge that she's never alone, never without options, and never without someone who will fight for her when she can't fight for herself. That's worth more than $4.2 million. That's worth everything.